Are you ready to stop the self-sabotage and create the life you desire? Well, in order for that to happen, you need to break free from the bad beliefs that are holding your success hostage. You need to optimize the stress by turning it into extra energy for success. And those hurtful habits? Well, we need to give that pain a purpose for progress. Welcome to Stop the Self-Sabotage and Create the Life You Desire podcast.
Did you know that if you needed to go into the dentist to get your teeth cleaned and you had an uncomfortable experience in the past at the dentist, that just seeing the tools that they were going to use on your teeth, if they had a tray sitting there of the tools that they were going to use to get things cleaned up, that just seeing those tools would actually increase the amount of pain that you would experience during your time with them? Yeah, isn't that wild? It doesn't mean that it would actually be more uncomfortable, but you would experience it as being uncomfortable because of seeing those implements of torture. This is the reason why for this is because the powerful part of your mind known as the subconscious, which, by the way, is found in every single cell of your body. We're going to need that in a moment, okay? Your powerful subconscious always tries to predict the future, but it tries to predict it based on past pain, not what's really happening in the moment. So no, this does not mean that you need to walk in with your sunglasses on to where you really can't see anything inside at the dentist's office. Although my dentist, very smart man, gives me sunglasses to put on that dims everything. Okay, so our system tries to predict the future based on the past pain. Well, we've all been through pain, right? And we've all been through pain involving other people. So if you went through a cycle that was very painful, where it actually caused harm, and we'll talk about that cycle in a moment, but it caused harm, well, you may not mentally remember what was happening because you stepped out of the relationship. It's known as disassociation. You stepped out of the relationship with the environment because you just couldn't handle it. So you weren't present to store those memories, but your subconscious, which is found in every single cell of your body, was still there to record, and your body never forgets. If I were to ask you, what do you think flashbacks are? Well, flashbacks, most people would describe as maybe somebody who is in a war and that they hear a loud noise and it triggers those memories of when they were being bombed. And now they're having a hard time handling life because of that. Yeah, but that is only a small percentage of what a flashback can be. A flashback doesn't have to be that conscious memory that comes forward. It can simply be your body going, wait, I've been in this cycle before, and this cycle of hurt was so hard that it actually harmed me. And then your system gets all hyped up and it thinks that you're back in that original experience, and it's going to do everything it can to go on full alert. And now we have a problem because we will be in a crisis and we can't handle what's happening from that hyped up harm cycle, nor can we get out of it. We feel trapped. And then we typically will have to have an experience of time passed before we feel things calm down. I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me here recently. I had a flashback for the first time in about a year. And it wasn't until after things began to calm down that I realized what was happening, even with me dealing with this area. And so I want you to be empowered to handle extreme levels of hurt when they show up, so you can at least get yourself to a safe space and place. Okay. So, what actually sets up this harm cycle before I share with you my flashback experience? Well, it's when we go through a cycle of what's known as hyper. And which one you go to first, well, that is going to be dependent on whether or not you typically seek out whenever you're stressed, or you go within whenever you're stressed. So hyper is when we reach out to others whenever we're stressed, whenever we're overwhelmed. But if you're in a situation with someone where they're using you for their benefit, it could have been, hey, you were a kid and you had an adult in your life that couldn't handle what was going on. So they parentified you by making you the little adult. Or maybe it was that an adult in your life that it should have been providing for you, and they weren't emotionally. And then you experience what's known as emotional anorexia. That was a term that was coined for what was happening between partners. But now we understand that it goes so much further than that, that it extends to all areas where somebody is actually starving you of something that you need. And they're doing it as a way to manipulate you. So it could have been emotional anorexia. It could have been parentification. But it was something that you needed to have place in life for you to be stable that was missing. And so you're reaching out, trying to find that stability. And now as an adult, how you can do that is by saying, oh, well, they don't care for me enough. They don't love me enough. They don't listen to me enough. I was trained to give even more. Did you just get that? I was trained to give even more, to make that other person's needs okay for them at my expense. So I will continue to do that. And then eventually they'll give me crumbs of connection. Even if you're dealing with somebody who's healthy, when you're operating like that, well, you can't have healthy and unhealthy in the same place. It's easier to pull somebody down to your level than to step up to theirs. And you can wind up triggering in them, not your fault, but you can wind up triggering in them dysfunctional reactions based on how you're operating. So that is whenever you reach out, the hyper cycle. I got to make it happen for them. It's going to be okay. But you can't sustain that, man. You're using up some really valuable resources quickly on the behalf of someone else. So then what are you going to do? You're going to go into hypo. And that's when you pull back. And your system is pulling back because it has to. It's exhausted. And this is when you go internal and you get sad. Situational depression comes in. You're going low because you are low in energy. You get quiet. You're not using your voice. And then you're doing it again to try to create safety. But what happened in the original wounding is this gave the person that was involved permission to continue because you didn't have enough of what you needed to even begin to think about drawing healthy boundaries. And then if you did want to draw healthy boundaries, you're so flippin' exhausted, you feel like you can't fight. You can't even, when they come in with their demands, it's just easier to go, okay, fine, I'm going to go along with that. So now we've moved from hurt to harm. And this is the cycle that bounces back and forth. And then you finally build up your boundaries, and now you're coming back and you're trying to state what you need and what should happen. But because you were never taught what a healthy boundary was, it was not around another person, it was around you. It won't be long before you're exhausted. And now you're going to go back into low levels of living. And for some of us, this went on for years. And you're in a cycle, and the body never forgets. So, how long does it take to move out of this cycle? Whenever I was working through my own complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I was informed. And by the way, I don't diagnose. I don't. I don't have that ability. I create the space for my clients to decide exactly what type of cycles they're in. I'm not going to tell you. I am not the expert on you. I am here to educate and empower, but you get to choose. That's the transfer of authority that needs to take place. When I was working through my own complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I was told that basically 1/4 to 1/3 of the time that you were in this harm cycle is how long it takes to move past, or you can fast track it and do it in 18 months. Yeah, you know it. I fast tracked it. But my body never forgets, and neither does yours. So a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, I was in a situation with someone where they pulled out a very manipulative tactic. They did something, and whether or not they're aware of it doesn't excuse them from the responsibility of what they did. And when it happened, I went into a flashback. Remember, flashbacks aren't those memories coming back. It is your body reacting on past pain and trying to predict the future. You've heard me talk about we all have different aspects of our personality. And I have the younger me that was wounded. And I also have the wise me, which is on the other side. Now, I've worked really hard at releasing the younger me from being triggered whenever hurt shows up. But this wasn't hurt. This was somebody trying to harm me. Okay. So how did my flashback showed up? It was hard to breathe. And I had an internal voice screaming at the top of her lungs. Abuser, abuser, abuser. We've got to get away. Abuser. Now, my wise woman was in there also, and she's going, we need to just step back. We need to pull back. We're not in the situation with them, that they're not directly in our environment right now. We need to step back. And I could hear that, but I could not relate to it because the younger me, all she wanted to do was get away. And so I acted out and I burned that relationship down to the ground immediately. And I did it by projecting my pain onto them. Now, what they did, it was really wrong. But I reacted from a place of not being safe instead of a boundary that could make sure I had the space and place I needed to be in. And so I burned the relationship down to the ground. And because it was with somebody that could be a potential abuser, that's all right. But it wasn't all right for me because that's not who I am at my healthiest. But I understood that little girl that came out was doing her best that she could at the time. And it wasn't until the next day that I came into an awareness that I was in a flashback. Okay, the body never forgets. Why am I sharing all of this with you? Because I want you to realize that some of the things, not everybody who's listening to this is going to have flashbacks. But when we've had problems with people where they have inflicted massive amounts of pain on us in our past, and now somebody is showing up in our environment and they're acting like that person from our past. Remember going to the dentist and seeing the tools for teeth cleaning, but it was uncomfortable in the past. And so now your powerful mind is trying to predict the future and go, oh, it's going to be even worse. Pull away, pull away, pull away. Maybe some of the reactions that you're having right now, you're like, why can't I get a grip on this? What's happening? Maybe you haven't recognized them for what they are. They're flashbacks because you're trying to predict the future, that it's going to be an amped up version of the past and you need to get away. This can also explain why sometimes when you go to start drawing boundaries, why you're predicting from that past pain of how much it's going to hurt. And so the very things you know that you need to do to be healthy are the very things that you're pulling away from, because that younger you has been put in the position of power of running your life for so long that your wise woman really doesn't have the space or place to come out. She needs to be strengthened. So you have a wound. And typically that wound is going to lead to some sort of crisis. And that crisis is going to involve you moving through the terror barrier. That terror barrier cannot be successfully navigated until we stabilize you. It's only once we stabilize you that we begin to say, what's the vision of who you want to be? Not what you need to do, but who you want to be in this experience. And that's when we take your wound and we turn it into your wealth. And then you begin to grow and develop and create those safe spaces and places for that younger you internally, and then externally show up in your power. If I can assist you with this, reach out to me, 1-636-699-7791. What I want you to do is I want you to text me and request a wound to wealth consultation, to where we're going to talk about what you've got going on. I will guarantee you will leave that consultation with a tip, tool, or technique to begin to stabilize you right away. Again, I haven't had a flashback in over a year. One showed up and I understood. It took time because it was such a severe flashback. It took me the next day before I could stabilize myself. But now I don't have to. Now I have the empowerment of understanding what could happen again in the future in this particular area. And I am now using that empowerment to predict my future, not the pain of the flashback. We use everything that has happened to you for you. So let's have a consultation. And in that consultation, I'll share with you, if you would decide to move forward with me, what that would look like. We can also talk for those of you who are going, I want to be able to do this for others. Well, I'm an instructor on you becoming a certified hypnotist whose specialty is in parts therapy, the different aspects of the personality that get into conflict, and we now need them to come together so they're not pulling you apart. They're actually pulling together for you to have a high quality life. 1-636-699-7791. You can do this, but we've got to move you out of the harm cycle into one of health after you've been stabilized.